Let's start with the lead story that we're tackling this evening on the India development debate. So, two reports coming in, one version from the Finance Ministry and one version from the Reserve Bank of India that talks about what is happening in the Indian economy. And it paints a pretty rosy picture, pretty positive picture. It talks about how resilience was seen during the third wave. By Feb, we have come back to a lot of pre-pandemic levels on several high-frequency indicators, and an important note coming in from what the Finance Ministry has put out today, saying that by the end of the year, we should look at an economic reset, which would mark the post-COVID-19 world. The RBI seems to echo this as well. There are some question marks and concerns on rural demand, but overall says we're poised for quite a quick recovery. The only caveat here in both the reports, I would say, is we don't know what's going to happen around the world, and global developments look, quite volatile right now. Let's get an independent view, really, of what the economic situation is in light of these two important messages coming in from different functionaries of the government. D.K Joshi, Chief Economist at CRISIL, is joining us on the show to do that with us. Mythili Bhusnurmath, Consulting Editor, ET Now, joins us today, as does Devendra Pant, Chief Economist of India Ratings. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us. Mythili, let me begin by getting your overview on the kind of messaging that is coming from both the Finance Ministry and the RBI. It talks a lot about how manufacturing will pick up on the back of schemes like PLI and the capex expansion that was announced in the budget. Do you think we will see the impact of that by the end of this year?
Well, Tamara, it's very difficult to say because however cliched it may sound, the only certainty in the world today is uncertainty. And recovery, like beauty, really lies in the eyes of the beholder. So both the government and the RBI are looking through rose-tinted glasses. They're right when they say we are much better off than we were at the time of the pandemic, most certainly. We are certainly, improving day by day. But to say that we're completely out of the woods and that India alone can strike a very different path, as the RBI bulletin says, and I quote, it says domestic macroeconomic conditions are striking a path that is divergent from global developments. And this in a globalized world is a little hard to believe. There's just no way any country can be completely divorced from what is happening in the rest of the world. So if there is uncertainty, if global situation is not looking rosy, neither can our conditions. It's only a question of time. But certainly, yes, it is right. We are better off than we were a year ago. But that is not to say that we will be better off than we were pre-COVID. Remember, pre-COVID itself, as per latest numbers, India's growth was 3.7. That is nothing to write home about. So I do hope that we will not just improve, but do far, far better. But I'm not sure we're anywhere near there at the moment.
All right, let me get your view, Mr. D.K Joshi, especially because the Reserve Bank of India also talks about an improvement in consumer sentiment and demand. And this is something that the Finance Ministry dispatch also speaks about. They say that as there is confidence in people, consumer sentiment will come back. That will in turn boost private investment, etc., etc. Do you think you're seeing signs of that yet? What would you wait to look for in terms of actual data to know that this is really the path we're treading?
Well, I think the ministry is right in saying that the year will end on a positive note. I think because the COVID has peaked out, and after every wave, we have seen the economy pick up. So same kind of broad basing of recovery will happen. I think by March, you will see that happening. So I think that is right. The issue is how long will it be sustained? I mean, that is the critical question here. And as we step into the next fiscal year, the COVID related risks are somewhat coming down, but there are other risks which are lurking on the horizon. I mean, the geopolitical risks, the crude, the Federal Reserve changing its policy stance. I think all of them will have an impact on us as well. And as far as the consumer sentiments are concerned, they are recovering. But if you look at it, compare it to the pre-pandemic level, they are still much lower than the pre-pandemic level. So I think despite some improvement of late, I think they're still much below, and so is private consumption. I mean, private consumption is also for 21-22 is still about a little over 2% lower than what it was in 2019-20. And I think so. So number of factors I think there are still uncertainties going ahead. I think as Mythili was pointing out. And we also know that I think that that the small segments, the MSME segment, they have been hit hard, and they'll take time to recover. And these are the labor-intensive sectors. So the recovery will take place, but I think there are some roadblocks on the way. I think depending on how acute they are, I think the recovery will accordingly take its own turn. I mean, so the point I'm trying to make is that there is, I think, there is a recovery path ahead of us, but how strong, I think we can't be very sure about that right now.
All right, Mr. Pant, over the last 2 years, I would say the economic forecasts and the conversations have been revolving around largely the factor of COVID-19. Whether there will be another wave, how far we've gone in terms of vaccinations, and the impact that restrictions are having on the economy. Do you think that phase seems to be behind us for now, and the real headwinds we could be facing are on other global developments, what's happening in Ukraine, Russia, what the Federal Reserve is doing, etc.?
I wish, Tamanna, I was in a position to say yes, that COVID-related risk is behind us. We never know, because if you look at what WHO and other experts are saying, that we can't be rest assured. But yes, because the way the vaccination has taken place, and now we are slowly moving away from pandemic to epidemic stage. So more and more people are infected or vaccinated. Chances of that going beyond control are low. But yes, there are both domestic and external risks. Not going into what Mythili and D.K Joshi has already said. What we are looking at, as Joshi pointed out, private final consumption expenditure in 21-22, based on first latest estimate is 2.2% lower than 2 years back. Where it will be when the second advance estimate will come, anybody's guess. It could be 2.5% lower, it could be 2% lower. Now, why that has happened? Now, if you look at past 4 years, 5 years, we are seeing PFCE growth is gradually inching downward. Now, what is happening is, if you look at economy level, the wages growth has slowed down. So wages growth, which used to be somewhere, nominal wages growth somewhere, which used to be somewhere around 10% has gone down. And it mirrors the decline in PFCE growth or the consumption growth. Now, on top of this, you superimpose the wage losses, the job losses, slow wage growth. Now, if you look at, you talked about rural consumption, you look at the rural wages, how the rural wages are going, how the minimum urban wages are going. They don't give a confidence that the consumption growth will revive very soon, and we will be able to come back at the high consumption phase very soon, because the moment unless we are able to come to high consumption phase, it is very difficult to have capex recovery happening in the economy on sustained basis. Some amount of capex has been happening and will continue to happen. So, other than that, your global risks are there: inflation, commodity, etc., etc.
Well, we'll talk further on what those global risks are and how you would rank them right now as far as the Indian economy is concerned. But Mr. Joshi, I want to come to you on the question of consumption for a little bit of follow-up in light of what Mr. Pant has said. So there is one school of thought that a withdrawal of restrictions will in itself lead to a boost in consumption. As restrictions are withdrawn, as cases ease off, people will automatically want to go out more, spend more, etc. Do you think that's going to be enough as far as India's consumption situation is concerned, or will consumption need more of a policy prod?
A one-time push for sure, because I think the contact-based services are still about 8 to 9% below the pre-pandemic level. So I think if COVID really settles down and is no more seen as or is in an endemic stage, so to say, then I think these services will bounce back. But that's not going to be a sustained push. I mean, that's going to be a one-time push because I think the base is so low. So I think the growth will appear very strong there. Sorry. Beyond that, I think the overall economy has to recover. The
Let me allow you to drink some water, perhaps. Mr. Joshi, no problem. Let me go to Mythili in the interim. Please take care and take your time. Mythili, I want to come to you on the consumption question as well and link it to another issue which is a problem around the world, but we seem to be quite certain that it will be under control, and that is one of inflation. We got a figure of 6.1% for the last month. It's technically outside the RBI's tolerance band, but the message coming in from the RBI is that this is because of a base effect and inflation will peter off. Looking at crude, precariously positioned, could go up as high as $100 a barrel. What do you think this certainty is based on?
I wish I knew, Tamanna, because I don't share RBI certainty at all. Because the fact is that when crude reaches these levels, then as we are as dependent on imports as we are, then there is just no way that you can avoid the pass-through. So far, the government has held, oil prices have been held constant since November because of elections. But the fact is that once these elections are over, government has just two choices. Either it allows the higher oil international prices to reflect in our domestic prices, or it cuts back on taxes. Either way, it has the same effect. If it cuts back on taxes, you're going to find your fiscal deficit increase. So it'll take a little longer time to ultimately show up in prices and higher interest rates. But there's no way you can escape it. So I wish I knew what RBI shared its confidence on. In fact, when there was a question at the press conference post the monetary policy statement, the governor refused to divulge the exact price at which these various models have been constructed. So today, when we have oil at over $90 a barrel, there's just no way we can keep inflation, within control. So, but I just hope this is a temporary phenomenon, but it doesn't seem so, because the US has just reported a 40-year high of 7.5. The UK has reported a 30-year high of 5.5 today. So I really do not see how India can escape this. That is the answer to the question on inflation. I hope the RBI is right and I am wrong for all our sakes, but as of now, it doesn't look that way. On the question of consumption, the fact is that even though there has been a recovery, this recovery has been very uneven. The poor and the lower income classes have really not recovered. They are the ones who consume. The propensity to consume, what economists call the marginal propensity to consume, is much higher amongst the poor who still need to consume. And unless the recovery becomes more even, you're not going to see consumption pick up. If consumption does not pick up, you're not going to see private investment happen, which is why the government has wisely decided to spend and have public investment. But that will take time. So I'm afraid recovery is going to be a slow process. I do hope it is a process and it doesn't come to an abrupt halt. But at the moment, I do not share either the government or the RBI's optimism, but I'm not entirely pessimistic. Yes, it is happening, but much slower than what the RBI and the government anticipate.
So the messaging from both these bulletins and these are regular bulletins that both the RBI and the Finance Ministry put out, and we should tell our viewers that the messaging seems to be that things will get better, and a large reason for that is the kind of policy push that is coming because of the measures that we've taken, whether it is the production-linked incentive schemes or an increase in capital expenditure that they plan to push through. Let me come to you on that, Mr. Joshi, and if you would like to complete your point on consumption as well.
Well, yeah, I think there is what Mythili was saying. I think there is a dichotomy in the economy, and though that is not going to correct anytime soon, so it's going to take time. So you might get a one-time push to consumption because of recovery in contact-based services, and people who are employed in these services, I think, who are underemployed right now, particularly in urban areas, will get some increase in their wages. So that will certainly be supportive of consumption. But there are other factors as well. I think it also depends on how much the crude prices rises and how much of it is passed on to the end consumer, because that's also going to have an impact on the disposable income of people. So what is happening to consumption is that the people in the higher income brackets, I think they have benefited during the pandemic in terms of their incomes. It's very, very obvious, and the others have lost out. So the consumption recovery is actually mirroring exactly that. I mean, so the demand for lower ticket items is weak. The demand for high ticket items such as automobiles, SUVs is quite high. So that's not going to correct. And I think unless the bulk of consumption demand goes up, I think we'll have to wait for push from the government. So my sense is that whatever government has done in the budget of supporting investments, that's going to play out. But they will have to raise the support through NREGA. They'll also have to maybe give some more subsidies. I think that's my sense. I think as we go through the year, because the growth tide will not lift all the boats. I mean, that's for sure. And unless all the boats kind of lift, the broad basing of consumption will not happen.
You know, Mr. Pant, I want to come to you with a bit of a forward-looking kind of question. A lot of policy support through the pandemic has come through easier credit or more easily available credit. Do you think we need to now keep a very close watch on what this does to the banking system, to the financial system, and whether these loans now are beginning to be paid back?
Well, Tamanna, yes, we have to be very careful where these loans are going, because if you look at even MSME, still whatever government decided, they are not able to disburse it. Is it the MSMEs are not coming up to take up these loans? Is it because most of them have closed down, or they don't require? But yes, if as of now, what is the situation right now is both the corporate sector and banking sectors, after a decade or so, are in a position to fund growth. So if there is a demand in the economy, the funding requirements of corporate balance sheets have been repaired. The banks are in a better position than they were, say, 5 years or 10 years back. So we have to be very careful where these loans have gone, whether they don't have the same issue which we had in the past, the legacy issue or whatever one may say, that it may turn out to be asset quality issues. But as of now, whatever is visible is that we are not seeing that kind of bubble as on today. But yes, it requires a very close watch.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us on the big debate. And yes, the picture is rosy, the one which is being presented by the Finance Ministry and the Reserve Bank of India. There are reasons to be optimistic. Our vaccination program, for one, and the extent to which we've managed to vaccinate such a large number of Indians has been phenomenal. And perhaps a bulk of the recovery that we see will come on the back of that policy move. So we also have to, though, look out for some of the pitfalls which have been mentioned today. Thank you to all of you for joining us on the first debate.